Hey there, and welcome back to another My Hero Academia video. And today we're going to be talking about the latest episode of Drop, episode 5, History's Greatest Villain, which is where we're finally going to get a look into the battle between Deku and Shigaraki. At this point, we're completely flying blind despite having read the manga before. It's all just faded out of my head except for the ending sequence. Thus, I'm pretty hyped up to see what happens next, especially after the episode we just had where Bakugo managed to outlast All For One in battle. So yeah, the obligatory warning in case some spoilers come back into my head, but otherwise, I think we're going to be just fine. Also, another side note, what is going on with Crunchyroll these days, man? Late episode drops, and when they do drop them, the subtitles aren't always finished. The hell is going on with that? Feels like a distinct drop in the quality of the service if you ask me. At this rate, I'm thinking that when the season ends, my subscription will once again be entering hibernation mode because it's just so annoying. With all that being said though, now it's time to jump into the episode. We start off the episode with a brief meeting that's set before the ambush, which is just there to fill time and explain what's going to happen in a pretty low stakes sort of way. I think this was probably for the best, as trying to get across the nuances of what Shigaraki's likely planning in detail, whilst also having the battle with Deku ongoing, wouldn't work that well. If you keep the action going at the same time, you risk people not really keeping up with what they're saying, but if you slow it down to accommodate this, it also throws off the pacing. So having this here in this fun little cold open lets the story breathe and gets across what both sides are fighting for ahead of time, so neither Deku or Shigaraki need to explain it and can instead think about plot relevant things in regards to the battle. Anyway, Best Jeanist makes it clear that the best case scenario in this fight is for All For One's personality to win out in its battle with Shigaraki. All For One, as we saw in his episode, needs to rule. He wants to own the world and be feared for his power. Thus, whilst he's violent and dangerous, at the same time, he's also far more beatable because he's more focused on his agenda. Shigaraki isn't like that. We've seen that Shigaraki's flu decided the world sucks and must be completely destroyed with no hope of rebuilding it. He doesn't care about ruling so much as he cares about chaos and anarchy, a complete teardown of the society they inhabit, which in turn would lead to the end times. It actually makes him such a terrifying villain when you think about it, because it means he has no real limit on what he can do. He never needs to think about holding back on an attack. All For One was always presented as this larger-than-life, unstoppable villain that only All Might could contend with, and so when he died, there was this chance that the stakes would feel like they're lessened. Thus, I think it is important to make Shigaraki feel like a really big deal, hence these big-name heroes saying that him being in control is the worst-case scenario. Of course, since show, don't tell is the better storytelling device, they then go on to back everything up they're saying at the same time through his actions. We come to the intro theme, and when we return, it's to see a few civilians crowd around the big screen in one of the big evacuation camps watching the battle. They're all looking devastated. One old guy's sobbing about how his family farm, dating back to his grandfather's days, just been lost to them forever. Inko Midori is crying, and then we see the city. Cracks appear and the water floods in, proving Best Jeanist is correct. Shigaraki thinks about how he's managed to master his decay. He can aim it to the depths rather than the surface, which weakens the structure of the city and causes total collapse. Pretty quickly, a significant part of Shizuoka, the city where they were fighting, is swallowed into the sea, and this is without him even really trying. Remember, he's still locked in battle with Deku. He then thinks about how at his current power level, he'd probably be able to destroy the entirety of Japan within a week and leave it with no hope of rebuilding or recovery. I do wonder whether it'd stop there though. That's always been the question for me. How far did All For One's sphere of influence spread? I mean, yes, he had allies all over the world, the show made that clear. His minions and allies were all playing up all at once to cause chaos in other countries, and by doing so, they ensured no foreign heroes or soldiers outside of Star and Stripe and her Air Force squad would come to help fight him in Japan. Was it just loose allegiance though, or was he really a warlord all across the world? It's the same question with Shigaraki. Does he care about the rest of the world? When he destroys Japan, is he then going to turn his attention to other countries too? What's the end game there? What happens when the war's over? Does he kill himself, float in the sea forever, dive beneath the waves, and start destroying the planet for good? Does he then float in space and travel around space blowing shit up forever? I truly do wonder what his endgame plan would be. Anyway, this visual of the two of them floating above the water with the waves crashing over them, it's just insane. Such a cool shot, and I love that each of them uses the terrain to their advantage in this fight. It really showcases their experience and makes them seem massively skilled and not just relying on the fact that they have insanely powerful quirks and bodies. It's always nice to see the proper tactics sprinkled in. So Deku bursts out of a wave while Shigaraki's in the swell and he kicks him, but of course it doesn't really do anything. The reality is that even without actively using any quirks, Shigaraki's impossible to defeat. His body's been perfected and he can outlast Deku no matter what he does and what combination of quirks he uses. Whilst he can put Shigaraki on the defensive for the time being, he can't actually hurt him in any long-term way that might give him an opening or a chance. Also, my god, the voice acting for Deku is so good here. That sort of deep, husky, almost hoarse voice, it just suits what's going on so well, makes him seem massively fatigued and desperate. It just helps to up the stakes of the battle. Here, Shigaraki feels that All For One has finally died. I love the smile that instantly comes onto his face. Whilst I do think think it was a bit of a shame to never actually get a proper 1 versus 1 between these two, or even a 3-way battle. I did like that in the end, the reason that All For One died for good is because Shigaraki didn't finish the job completely against Bakugo, and so he's kind of indirectly responsible for All For One's fate, in a similar way to how All For One was responsible for his. After all, Nana put her son into care to protect him for All For One, which made her son feel abandoned, and eventually led to him being abusive towards Tenko, would send him on the path to slaughtering his whole family and becoming Tomura Shigaraki. Once again, we get a really cool visual with that huge wave crashing over them, and Shigaraki strikes whilst Deku's recovering. As he's about to touch Deku, the fourth user's face flashes across the screen, and you see Deku move his arm and sever Shigaraki's fingers. I thought this was really clever, as you kind of expect that he's just trying to outright kill him, and that guy's face on screen was showcasing Deku use danger sense. But then you have the fifth user appear and start talking to Deku, and from here it's clear the quirk's actually been stolen from the collective. Although that being said, you have to touch them to steal a quirk, right? You can't almost touch them, so I do wonder why he bothered to steal it if he could have just dusted him to begin with. Or is it to do with the place that the hand was touching? It seems that the hole in his hand is where the quirk factor is going to get sucked into, and that's on his palm. So if that's touching but the fingers aren't, I suppose it would allow him to steal the quirk but not dust him instantly. It's a bit of a dodgy explanation, but it is what it is. We then get a look into the vestige realm to see how all of this played out and how it was possible. After all For One had seemingly been in position to steal this many times before and was unable to do it. Is it because that Shigaraki has a more powerful will than All For One that this is happening? Or is it because that previously, when it was just accumulated power, it was harder to take because all that power was extra concentrated, but when the different quirk factors awoke, suddenly you could isolate them and split them off, hence why that happened here? Anyway, all the vestiges are focusing on the battle with Shigaraki and discussing how Deku could potentially defeat him in battle. Plus, there's the realization that All For One had finally died, so they don't really see this coming except for number 4. Given that they're all quirk vestiges, I guess he doesn't have danger sense so much as he is danger sense, and so he's able to get them all out of the way at the cost of himself. So there goes the first quirk. I tell you what though, it is kind of a shame for me that All For One's lingering consciousness inside of Shigaraki's been obliterated, because I'm pretty sure this is the only user of One For All he never actually got to meet in person. Even just for a throwaway line of dialogue, it would have been fun for them to speak or something, and both of them to talk some shit. Shigaraki makes it clear that he doesn't really much care about getting his hands on this quirk, and fair enough. He's invulnerable, and he has an insane library of quirks at his disposal. Why would he care about these? It actually makes a lot of sense, since All For One only wanted it to get his brother back with him forever. I actually found this rather funny, oddly. I mean, the whole run of the show, All For One was built up as this huge imposing figure who was going to try to steal One For All from Deku, but in the end, he never made it to Deku, he was killed twice over, and now his successor couldn't care less about trying to achieve his goal beyond knowing that by taking it, Deku will be easy to kill. Once again, the music and the action really begin to kick in as Deku tries to desperately fight against Shigaraki, but now he can't hope to grab him with Black Whip because he has danger sense and he can feel Deku's moves coming. I just love how creative the fights are feeling, how high octane and intense. Seriously, the action has been so good this season, and every single battle has had me on the edge of my seat, so eager to see what's going to happen next. Like I said, I love the creativity on display and how Deku turns himself into a bouncy ball to tank a hit from Shigaraki that sends him flying all the way to Mount Fuji. As this is going on, of course, Shigaraki's screaming at him that Deku's a fool because he still thinks that little boy's in there, but he's dead. He's gone. Of course, the fact that he's even bringing this up to begin with when it seems that Deku hasn't spoken to him much at all in this fight so far, and so much has happened, makes it seem like he's actually dwelling on what he said previously. So it kind of implies that the little kid is still in there to some degree. On top of that, we know from the fight in the coffin before Deku arrives that Tenko was still in there, and got very upset when they said he had no friends or something like that, lashing out like a little boy. So clearly this is him being in full denial. I think the episode wants you to lose some hope and expect that Deku's eventually going to give up and try to make the choice to kill him. After all, he said he would do that if Shigaraki was truly beyond saving. Thus, I think this is really good writing because it once again sets up that expectation and lets Deku smash them. He has a really cool, excellent, character-defining moment later on in the episode where it seems like all hope is lost, but we'll touch on that when we get there. It seems despite having created a defensive ball with Black Whip, the attack really took it out of Deku. The mask he's wearing is shattered, he's bleeding profusely from the head, and he's woozy and out of breath. The third user appears to him and tells him that now he's stopped moving, that gear shift could run out at any time, and I'll be honest, this was starting to get pretty annoying. Seriously, they've been telling us that gear shift is going to make his body conk out any minute now for multiple episodes. I get that anime loves to beat you over the head with a plot point to make you understand it, but my god, it is particularly egregious today. It keeps coming up to the point that it just seems so frustrating to tell you the truth. Either shit or get off the pot. It takes the episode almost another full 10 minutes to get to the point that it's relevant again, and in the meantime, he has another complete action sequence. I do kind of think the pacing in this episode was a bit of an issue. I think the only important takeaway from this conversation is that whilst danger sense was taken from Deku, the accumulated power the fourth user built up was not. So losing these quirks seemingly will not impact his power, even if the quirks are taken. I expect that if he loses all of it, he'll simply be on borrowed time like All Might was after he passed on One For All to Deku in Season 1. Back in the Vestige world, the 6th user wants Deku to make a run for it because he thinks that in his current state, he has no hope of defeating Shigaraki and he's going to lose their chance. But if he does run, Shigaraki can easily hunt him down with his tracking quirk, right? Deku's cooked no matter what way you view things, and even if Shigaraki lets him go, he'll simply start destroying everything and killing all of Deku's friends and loved ones. Terrible plan. Shigaraki arrives and then freaks out the ghost of Bruce Lee, and yes, that is actually this dude's name, and unleashes a really chilling monologue that is once again enhanced by the music and excellent animation. He talks about how the One for All users always manage to escape and get stronger. Not this time though, because he'll just keep chasing and destroying wherever they go. Just further reaffirmation that Best Jeanist was right. This dude is nothing like All for One. It was possible to escape him because he simply wanted the quirk, but this guy, he wants everything to become dust, and so he really just is an absurd threat to Deku now. It's so crazy how over the years he's gone from such a pathetic, whiny man-child making gaming references to this force of nature that's oozing dark aura. What an excellent arc, and it really feels like the inverse of the journey that All for One went on over his time on screen, especially in the final season where all his plans began to fail and he well and truly lost it. Luckily for Deku, his vestiges are on the ball as number 5 warns him that Shigaraki is using decay to try to trigger an eruption of Mount Fuji to continue to try to lay waste to Japan itself. The animation and the music once again kick into high gear as Deku declares to Shigaraki that despite it all, he's still a person. So there's his first awesome hero moment of the episode where he rejects the idea that Shigaraki's beyond human and is unable to be saved. He also reveals that even when he got launched, he was using Black Whip to flex his muscles, which in turn helped him build up his Fajin stockpile and hit a Delaware smash, which shattered the layers of the ground which were being decayed, preventing the wave from spreading all the way to Mount Fuji. Once again, another really clever tactical play. Shigaraki seemingly having fun fighting at this point as, after all, he likely doesn't think he can actually lose. He tries to get back to the ground to restart decay, but is ambushed by Deku using smokescreen, which kicks off yet another really awesome action sequence where Deku plays cat and mouse. He briefly hides in the smoke before emerging to attack him while Shigaraki dodges again and again. What I liked though is that Deku doesn't just get cheaped out here and beaten out of nowhere. When Shigaraki finally lands his big hit on him, which in turn makes Deku run out of time for gear shift, kickstarting the recall process which will herald his defeat, Deku actually made a mistake leading into it. They all know that Shigaraki has searched from Ragdoll and can find Deku in the smoke, but in the heat of battle, with wounds, fatigue, and realistically a concussion from being smacked all the way to Mount Fuji, Deku forgets all about this and he pays the price. Just a really well written battle if you ask me. From this point onwards, the fight is over. Deku's slower than he was before, and Shigaraki is just able to calmly monologue at him about how he overcame his trauma long ago whilst dodging everything he's dishing out. Here we once again have Grandma joining the chat to tell Deku that the time to kill him has come, that he can't be saved at this point. I would question how she thinks he can even do this now though. Even when he wasn't injured and had gear shift when they were fighting in the waves, he was struggling to land his hits, and even then, he lost one of his quirks. The game is currently survival more than anything else. Talking about finishing the job like he actually has any real choice in the matter at this stage is ridiculous. I always find she gives some of the worst pep talks and advice. She needs to pipe down. Grin and bear it. Strike him hard enough to destroy him without a trace. What? How the hell is he supposed to be able to do that? I really just don't understand. Here, Deku gets his second major heroic moment where he declares to Nana that no, he is still in there. Otherwise, why would he still be holding on to all his trauma and pain? Instead, it's clear that he's put a lid on it and got buried deep down, and so Deku's going to keep punching until he opens that lid again. Oh my god, Deku is just so much fun. There really is no other character quite like him in the show. He's so pure and good and full of compassion. He even starts crying, recounting all of that. Great voice acting work here from Deku's actor too. Then again, in this series, I don't think there's really been a bad voice performance. It's just this gravelly tone that lends a lot of gravitas to the scene. In the Vestige realm, the second user reveals that this personality trait that Deku has, the desire to be a true hero and save everybody in need no matter what, is the reason he disapproved of Deku at first. He thought it was an arrogant idea born of somebody who's ever known a world of peace. After all, even All Might was capable of doing what needed to be done, because they all grew up in a version of Japan that was far more dangerous than one Deku grew up in. However, Kudo reveals that by watching Deku over the weeks and months since he was able to access the vestiges, he has, like pretty much every other older hero who comes into contact with Deku, been completely inspired by his pure heart and determination. This kid really is the second coming of All Might, isn't he? Here is where we get an idea of where the story's going to go. All Might's ghostly vestige points out something to Kudo, which in turn leads to Kudo telling Deku that he needs to let go of One for All. We see that within Shigaraki, Star and Stripe's power lives on, calling out to All Might that Tenko's still in there, which confirms what we knew all along. We have a brief scene with All Might to fill out some time before we cut over to Shigaraki slapping down Deku, as I thought he would, seeing as Deku's running on fumes, before he too has the realization that Star's still in there. Man, I still think she's got to be one of the most wasted characters in the franchise, right? They should have introduced her character into the story earlier or something. Regardless, I think it's pretty cool that she's still getting these big moments long after she died. In a crumpled heap on the ground, Deku asks Kudo what he means, and we learn that while Shigaraki's hardened all his anger and hate into this big ball of determination within him, there is a crack in it that leads to little Tenko in all his pain. Basically, the dude's mentally ill, and they plan to be able to jump into his body and kickstart some sort of breakdown, as that's the only way for them to win. After all, even if Deku wasn't physically destroyed, he still wouldn't be able to beat him. I think he would have had to go full throttle right at the start of their fight and try to kill him straight away to do so. But that just isn't in his character at all. He's the hero who saves everybody. Thus, the vestiges are going to have to try to help him out. Kudo's grand plan is to try to crash one for all into the wound in the mind by forcibly transferring the quirk over as opposed to the usual peaceful transfer. In this way, Shigaraki is going to be overloaded and potentially won't be able to properly use his quirks. Kudo also proves to be a very strategic mind here by telling them that he's going to go first. If the plan works, then good. If it fails, well shit, Shigaraki has gear shift, but it's the weakened version I think, since it doesn't come with the power and it's also going to have the recoil. Although at the same time, they also seem to think that the recoil would be enough to cripple Shigaraki, in which case it must be the version Deku has, in which case if he uses it, Deku's dead meat anyway, right? Even if he's able to move again since the quirk recoil is gone, Shigaraki would just be too fast with gear shift, although since he is a villain, I reckon his time for the recoil to start would be massively shorter due to the power of the plot. Also, I feel like this is a massive gamble since Deku is stuck on the ground here. Maybe Shigaraki doesn't even bother to take his quirk, he just dusts him here and then. I don't really see why he doesn't do that. He's already said that he doesn't care about the quirks and Deku can't move, so why doesn't he just kill him? Oh well, power of the plot. So it becomes clear that Deku's going to need to give up his quirk to survive and to win, turning this into his own personal Camino Ward battle. I do hope he hits a United States of Smash in that case to go full circle. That scene with all the vestiges just in awe of Deku was so powerful, and then Deku somehow stands up because apparently this recoil means jack shit. He powers up into some sort of berserker monster form, and I do wonder how his hands even do this. What is going on here? No explanation though, just end credits. The preview promises more combat, the passing of the quirk, and more on Shigaraki's origin. Not sure what else could be said, but I'm eager to find out. So that's the end of the episode. Bit mixed today. Weird pacing at times, but the action, acting, music, and a lot of the story points were really good, so it balanced out. We're starting to come to crunch time now, so I'm really curious as to what comes next. With all that being said though, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.